without further ado, let's get into it. I am going to kick this off with a nugget, and then I'm going to pass the mic to one of the speakers so that they can introduce themselves and they can also share a golden nugget. I like for people to jump right in with something that you can use right away. Hi, Dr. Sandy. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you. And so, my golden nugget is this: when we talk about burnout, when we talk about overwhelm, when we talk about decision making, all of which we're going to dive into today, my thought is this: if the decision that you need to make is not a hell yes, HELL, then it's actually a no. I want you to sink that in for a moment. Excuse me. If the decision is not a hell yes, then it's really a no. So I'm going to pass the mic to Carla first. Carla, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, and then share a golden nugget with us while I take a sip of water.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Erskine. I am a productivity and work-life balance coach for women entrepreneurs. I help women implement routines into their day so that they can avoid overworking, overwhelm, and burnout. And I would say that my golden nugget is definitely directly related to routines. Just like when we have a 9 to 5, it is imperative that we implement structure into our day. And my golden nugget is structure is freedom. Thank you, Dr. Lynette, for having me today.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure to share you with the world, and I look forward to some more golden nuggets to come. And Carla, who would you like to pass the mic to next?
Next on my screen is Sid Scott.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for jumping in, Dr. Pam, Desiree. My name is Sid Scott, and I help you get off the emotional roller coaster. So instead of emotions running your life, it is the other way around. I'm a military veteran of 8 years and full-time online coach, and I help people really navigate the emotions that can really overwhelm us or can really make life truly incredible. So I have a nugget to go ahead and get this started. It's that rest is actually productive. And beyond productive, rest is prosperous. Rest is blessed. Now, whether you're religious or spiritual or not, in the Bible, there are three things in the beginning that have been blessed. Okay? It's man, humanity to be fruitful, multiply, and prosper, and the creations. And it's also the Sabbath being an intentional day of rest, an intentional day of delight, an intentional day of joy. Now, if we know that there's three things that have been blessed, and a day off or a day of rest being one of them, then we can reasonably assume that it is actually proper for us to take some time off. Now, whether you observe the Sabbath or not, whether you're religious or not, I think we can all agree that the principles in that book have stood the test of time for many, many people throughout the world. And that is one of them that I hold near and dear, that rest is actually productive. And when we're on the conversation of when we're on the conversation specifically centering people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, it's even more important to recognize that it is okay for us to rest, and it is not lazy, and it is not unproductive, and it does not mean that we are not serious about and the lives that we'd like to create. So that is my nugget. I would like to go ahead and kick it over to Mr. Mayoko Taylor. Please introduce yourself. Hit us with some gems, brother.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks, Dr. Lee, for having me. Carla, Sid, you are my people, so I'm glad and excited to be here. Basically, quite simply, what I do is I create a safe space for leaders and disruptors to kind of reach that level of fulfillment, by unbalancing their life and basically taking their yes back. And what I mean by that, before I get into my quick nugget, what I mean by that is society's norm of what balance is, I believe is absolutely incorrect. They have this one size fits all approach, and I feel like it's unique to each individual. And we've given our yes to society by saying no to everything that actually serves our passion, our interests, and allows us to rest, like Sid was saying so beautifully. So my nugget for today is going to be unbalance your life. And what I mean by that is don't look at balance the conventional way that society has us looking at balance, like we have to pursue happiness, we've got to put it on some type of metric scale to where work life equals personal life. Don't look at balance the same way. So if I can take away a nugget, if I can give you a nugget, it's unbalance your life. Don't look at it from the societal norm that we're used to. Balance is going to be equivalent to what is going to equal the level of fulfillment in your life that you truly are aiming for. So that's my nugget.
Awesome. Thank you. I was really sitting here thinking about each nugget, and because I happen to know the backstory for each speaker, which I'm sure that they will share and weave into today's conversation, there's one particular statement that really jumps out at me, and I want to read this to you. Don't forget to click on the speaker's face and follow them if what they're talking about really resonates with you. Perhaps you have a show that you would like to invite them to be a speaker on as well. I would love that. But here's something that Carla said, and I'm going to read it so that I don't mess it up because it's absolute fire. And then I would love for her to expound on this. Carla says, busyness is the new addiction. We're hooked on the illusion of productivity, neglecting the very essence of our being. Carla, that statement was just absolutely, it's a mouthful, it's a heartful, it's a mindful, it's so much going on in your words. I would love for you to talk to us more about that.
Thank you, Dr. Lynette. Yes, so this was so evident to me during the pandemic when we all had to pause. So many of us had become addicted and accustomed to being on what I call the hamster wheel, that when we had to step off, it was very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Like deeply uncomfortable, where you had to start reflecting and evaluating your life. A lot of people hadn't ever had to sit with themselves, right? And so the opportunity to do that was very uncomfortable for a lot of people. So when I say that, I mean that business has become an addiction where it's really hard for people to just sit and be and do nothing and sit with themselves. Like I know people personally who cannot do that. They always have to be going. They always have to be busy. They always have to be engaged in some type of activity with other people. And so I think that is one of the reasons why we're seeing burnout numbers skyrocket, is because we have, especially with technology. I think you have to acknowledge that technology plays a big part of that. But we're so used to constant activity that the thought of not having any or not having any is really uncomfortable for most people.
That is absolutely an understatement. And something that you said additionally that I think puts the cherry on top of your share just now is you said, remember, you're not a smartphone. You don't need to be on all the time to be awesome. And I think that that is just a perfect analogy. We have gotten to the point where we think that we have to be on and moving and doing and accessible and answering and interacting and doing tasks all the time. And I believe that setting strong boundaries for our mind, body, and business for that matter is crucial to eliminating burnout, not just decreasing it. And Mayoko, I know that you're one who talks a lot about boundaries, and you've often said that there is a right way and a wrong way to create boundaries. I would love to hear what are the right ways and the wrong ways so that we can make sure we're on point with our life.
Sure. So most people create boundaries based on what sounds good. This may ruffle a little feathers, but I just want to be fully transparent here. Most people do boundaries based on what they think sounds good. So if it's a situation, an area of their lives that they want to fix, they may write a statement saying, you know what, I am not going to be in this particular relationship anymore. It sounds good, but here's where people really fall short. If the boundary that you create is not in alignment with your values, your principles, or your beliefs, you will not, one, be able to reinforce that boundary, and two, you're not going to be able to keep that boundary from the very beginning. You're doomed from the very beginning. So the correct way to actually formulate a boundary is first you have to know who you are, what you want, and what it's going to take to get there. And a lot of people, because we're in the hustle and bustle of society, we have to unlearn this hustle mindset. Once you do that, you can actually tap into who you really are. When you know who you are, then you know exactly what you want. Now you can get in touch with your values, your principles, the things that you believe, and the things that are most important to you. When you do those things, when you do that work, now you can start to set a boundary. So when that boundary is in place and somebody steps violates that boundary, or that boundary is being pushed, now you can push back because that boundary is connected to your values, your beliefs, and your principles. These are the this is the core essence of who we are as human beings. So you can't just set a boundary because it sounds good and you know it's the right thing to do. It has to be the thing for you to do. There's a difference between it's the right thing to do, but it's the thing that's going to be conducive for you and your values and your principles. So that's the correct way to set a boundary. There's work that has to happen before that boundary is even set. And this is how we're missing the mark on setting boundaries, Dr. Lynette.
And you also talk about creating a boundary power statement. What does that look like?
Okay, so boundary power statements are, see, everybody preaches you got to say no, right? Learn how to say no. What I basically talk about is there's so many different ways to say no, and I'm going to give you an example. We all have that person that likes to call us, whether it be about drama or whether it be about situations that are completely distracting to what we're trying to do at the time. So some of us, me being a former people pleaser, I used to have a problem with saying no big time. So I would take on these particular responsibilities, the energy, the emotions of everybody else, and it would, stress me out and lead to burnout, ironically. So what I started doing is, how can I say no in a way that is conducive to myself? We all have different ways of saying no. Some people can just flat out say no, and that's great. What I started doing is I used to say, you know what? I'm not at the capacity to really help you right now, but I would love to help you. How about this? Maybe we can talk about this sometime later on in the day or sometime next week. How's that? And most people I will find will say, okay, you know what? That's cool. Talk to you later. So I was on to something. So I said, what was so different about what I said versus what I used to say? What I did is I reinforced positivity. I let them know that you're heard, you're understood, and I would love to help you, but now's not the right time. So, albeit I didn't say flat out no, get lost, I told them no in a way that was comfortable for me. And as I started to work on these boundary statements, I got better at being more assertive. The more assertive I became, the easier it is to say, no, that's not going to work for me, but I love to help you. How about this? So, what I did is I reinforced positivity. I let them know that they were understood, they were heard. I would love to help, but it's not the right time for me. So, then I offered a suggestion. Once I started doing those things, it started to help me. I increased my energy and I just stopped dealing with a lot of things that I was taking on. So that's a boundary power statement. You reinforce it with something positive. You let them know that they're understood. Yes, I love to help you. Although I would like to help you, it's just not the right time. Then you offer a suggestion. Then once you do that, it just, the results are amazing. And it's something that I've been implementing in my life, and I implement it in my clients' lives as well. And it's transformational because not everybody can just say no, but there's 1,001 ways to say it.
Yeah, there's 1,001 ways to say not yet. That's
Not
one of
yet.
yeah, that's one of the things that I have said to my clients a lot when they want to do something in their business to increase profitability, to get more freedom. Sometimes a no is not no, sometimes it's a not yet. And understanding that not yet isn't a denial, isn't a shutdown, isn't a crushing of your dreams or your plans or your vision is also important to this burnout, because if we are focused on go, 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 do, achieve, 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 and we are not taking time to, as Carla said, be, then it increases the chances of burnout. One of the things that I know Sid talks about a lot, and I believe is the seed. It's the undercurrent to what we've been talking about so far is about emotions and about feelings. And so, Sid, I know that you have shared 7 emotions that humans avoid or that they fear, and those emotions is what's holding us back. And I would love for you to either share them all or share the ones that you feel are most relevant to the conversation today, because I am concerned that unless we manage our feelings, being able to create boundaries and deliver boundary statements is going to be pretty difficult.
You're right. It really comes down to we all do things or don't do things to feel something or to avoid feeling something else. And I'm actually gonna walk it back to what Mayoko was talking about with boundaries in the right way and the wrong way to set them. And one thing that I was thinking about as it relates to emotions is one, emotions are usually really they're formed based on certain experiences that we have. And some of those experiences can be traumatic. And one of the things that I was thinking about is if it pains you still, then it binds you. You're bound to it. And a lot of people set boundaries based on pain that they felt in the past or some sort of pain or discomfort that they're wanting to avoid feeling now. One of those emotions that one of the 7 that a lot of people have difficulty with is positive feelings towards themselves. And that can show up, for example, feeling good about yourself, feeling like you're worth it, feeling seen, known, visible, recognized, valid. And sometimes we can set boundaries, meaning that we just keep everyone at an arm's length, everyone at a distance. We push people away, we push support away, we push healthy connections away. Because if people truly cared about us, if we had people around us that had our best interest in mind and truly looked after us and truly showed us love, we would be confronted potentially with having to feel good about ourselves, having to feel worthy. And so, we set a boundary around the amount of people that we'll communicate with. And we'll say something like, I'm a loner, or, I don't trust people easily. You really have to earn my trust. We say these things to keep people at a distance, but ultimately not having good support, not having those healthy relationships, not having that closeness, that intimacy, that connection from a place of fear, from a place of pain that we're bound to in the past. I mean, we can end up burned out. We can end up setting boundaries, to your point, Mayoko, that don't actually serve us, that don't actually sustain us. But we're created from a place of pain and created from a place of fear. And that's what I've got to that point. Dr. Lynette, back to you.
Thank you. You also said whatever you want the most right now and don't yet have is likely the result of an emotion you're afraid to touch. Can we talk about that too?
We can, definitely. So I would encourage each of you who's listening right now to just take a moment to think about what is the one thing, like, that you dream of, that if you could just have it right now, that one thing, what would it be? For some people, it's to have $1 million, $10 million, right? For some people, it's something financial. For some people, it's an intimate relationship. For some people, it's maybe a promotion. I'm going to give you a moment to think about what is the one thing that you really want and deeply desire that you don't have. Now, like I said earlier, we all do things or don't do things to feel something or to avoid feeling something else. And chances are, if you don't have that one thing right now, it's because something about it is scary. Something about it is threatening. Something about achieving and having and possessing whatever that thing is would require you to be someone who takes different actions, who creates that outcome. But something about that is scary. Something about actually having it does not feel safe. The number one thing that we are wired for in our nervous system is safety. That's the main intention, is safety and survival. So we tend to live an experience that we feel safe and comfortable with. That's conducive to, or at least from the perspective of our nervous system, that's conducive to our survival. But we also have this intention playing out inside of us, which I like to call purpose, which is in direct conflict oftentimes with the intention that plays out inside of us to keep us safe. And when we think about those big dreams, those deep desires that we don't have, in my opinion, they're intimately related to our purpose, the reason why we're called to be here. We desire these things for a reason. They've been placed inside of us for a reason. Now, again, we have to take certain actions. We have to become someone different to achieve those outcomes, to realize that potential, to walk fully in our purpose. And sometimes we don't always do that because there's fear involved. There's imposter syndrome involved. There's perfectionism involved. And ultimately, if we had that thing, it would mean something about us. And maybe we're not necessarily comfortable with what it would mean. It doesn't feel safe to have. And so that's what I mean. If we think about, well, when did I decide that this was not safe to have? Or when did I decide that it was not okay for me to be this person? Or it wasn't safe for me to be this person? Or it wasn't okay for me to be seen in this capacity? When did I decide that? Chances are it points back. If you trace it back, if you take your time with yourself, you'll find some sort of experience in your past that is enveloped in a lot of uncomfortable, overwhelming, difficult emotions. And so that's what I really mean when I say, the thing that you want most, it's probably trapped or hidden behind some sort of emotion that you haven't resolved or dealt with. And once you understand that, once you recognize that, once it becomes safe for you to be that person who takes those actions, who has that result, and it feels safe and okay for you, I mean, you're much more likely to walk into it versus being in your own way.
In your own way. Boy, we sure do that a bit more than we probably ought. I was just thinking about a conversation that Sid and I recently had, and it really does dawn on me that we are in our own way more than the external things that we tend to blame our circumstances on. And so being willing to take responsibility for the decisions you make, for the actions that you take, is important. And I know that Carla talks about decision exhaustion. And when I first heard her say decision fatigue, I really had to step back and think about all the decisions that we make in one day's time, especially if you have kids involved. And so, Carla, I would love for you to really help us to understand decision fatigue and how it is taking a toll on us emotionally, productivity wise, burnout wise, whatever comes to mind to share for you.
Thank you so much. So, one of the things I noticed when I started doing this work is that I would be exhausted at the end of the day, and I couldn't understand why. What was driving this mental exhaustion? And I started. I heard the term decision fatigue before, but I really started to look at it and dissect it and analyze how it impacts our day. So if you are a thought leader and much of your work is around um, making decisions, creating solutions, every time from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, we're making decisions, and the level of decision making we have to make is directly related to the amount of mental work that we have to do. And so, one of the things that I work with business owners about doing is creating systems and structure and routines in their day so that they can eliminate and alleviate some of this mental decision making that we have to do. And so when I started looking at solutions, one of the things I realized is that, again, that when we start working for ourselves, we don't have the structure and routines that we once had. And so once we can start implementing those routines into our day, we can stop some of our mental stress that comes from decision making. And so, if you find yourself at the end of the day exhausted, start thinking about um, the structure you have in place. Are you having to decide every action in your day? What you'll notice is that as the day continues, that process becomes more and more difficult, and the decisions that we make become less and less effective. And so, if we can eliminate some of those decisions by creating containers for our actions, then we can make better decisions for ourselves, our lives, and those around us. So, I want to compel you that start looking at the structures you have in your life and in your day, and the more you can contain those actions, the better you'll be. And it may sound really rigid if you're a free flowing person, but even the loosest containers will help with that decision making. Even choosing what we call like a uniform to wear, where you don't have to spend a lot of mental capacity choosing your food, choosing your outfits, choosing things that have little impact on your actual day, and you can reserve that mental capacity for decisions that are really going to move the needle and drive you forward. So thank you, Dr. Lynette. I think we don't consider that enough in our day to day.
The other thing I would love to hear you share is you have a distinct difference between habits and routines. Can you talk to us about that so we can make sure we have them in the proper order of priority?
Yes. So when I think about the difference between habits and routines, I think of habits as it's kind of like these one-off activities that we've accustomed ourselves to doing. Maybe like, oh, I take a shower and then I brush my teeth. So that to me is a habit. A routine to me is more of an intentional practice where we have set aside a time to complete certain activities. I have six concepts. I call them the balancing acts. These are six routines that I encourage my clients to use throughout their day, starting with what we all probably heard of, which is our morning routine. And I like to do three things in my morning routine because I want to keep it functional and effective. So I limit it to three things. I want to do something for my mind, something for my body, and something for my soul. And so you can fit those different areas with many different things from journaling to hydrating, meditating, whatever you reading, listening to a podcast, whatever you need to do to kind of ground yourself in the day. And then I have five other routines from creating a morning meeting to get your workday started to reaching out to someone each day to build meaningful connections. And so these six balancing acts serve as containers and structures for effective productivity and to eliminate stress and burnout. And so, if we can add these structures into our day, then we can then build in those things that we love to do, the self care, all of those things, those outside interests that we have around these structures. And so I don't look at them as restraints. I look at them as tools of freedom. So, Dr. Back to you.
Oh, I love that. And what I love on top of that or in addition to that is I believe that's what you are referring to with your bossy days. Is that right?
Absolutely. So the bossy days are built around those six balancing acts and how you can finish the day empowered and feeling good about your day and allowing yourself the time to come down. Like we have a shutdown routine, allowing yourself to wrap the day up, close the day out, and then come down because a lot of times when you work for yourself, it starts to bleed into your whole day where it's like your own, like we talked about, your own all day. You're working all day, so that routine uh, is a mechanism to shut off the work day and usher you into the rest of your day so you can just be. So yes, that's my bossy days concept.
I love that. I just love what that's called. I hope you have it trademarked. But that's a sidebar. So, before I go to the next speaker with my next question, I want to thank Dr. Paulette for being here. Carissa, I can't see the whole name, and so I hope that the rest of your name is because I can only see the Chris part. And then I see Tessa, Tekka. Again, listen, guys, we need to have some phonetics next to our names on these little teeny screens because I'm just messing names all up today and I apologize, but please know, charge it to my eyesight or something, but not to my heart. I love you. I really do. I am going to go to my echo. Um, there's something that I found very interesting that you have said, and that is that emotional and mental triggers are good for you. And you gave us 4 reasons why. So whether you share all 4 or you share the ones that are most relevant at this moment, I really need to know why and how emotional mental triggers are good for me.
All right. This is always a controversial topic, and I love it. Emotional triggers are often talked about in the negative way. And I think Sid will probably agree with me on this. Um, Emotions are indicators, right? I kind of consider them beacons. They are our body's alarm system of telling us that something is not right or something needs to change, or they're just guiding us to where we need to be. And this is kind of how I agree with him in regards to purpose and emotions kind of playing a very important part in that. So let me give you a perspective on what I mean. So let's say I'm watching television, right? And I have this amazing idea that I've sat on for about 10 years. And then I see somebody on television that kind of acted out on something similar, and they're at a level of success that I desire to be. Now, seeing that person may trigger an emotion of anger or an emotion of, uh, we'll just stick with anger. Now, that's an emotional, that thing triggered me because I had a similar idea or something in relation to that idea. And what happened is somebody else took action and I did it. So what I may do at that particular period of time, that's an indication of letting me know that I actually sat on something that had I took the action on doing, I could have actually been in that same position or either beyond that. So what that may cause me to do is actually get off my behind and actually take action towards some of the other things and the other visions that I may have myself. So that's what I mean by emotional triggers. That's just one example. There's a bunch of examples for that. But what our emotions do and those triggers do in that particular case, it causes us to actually take actions on things that we have been putting on the back burner for far too long. So triggers can actually be signals that direct us to doing something that's going to be actually positive for our life instead of negative. And I know oftentimes triggers are associated with negativity, um, in in ways that it's not conducive to us really getting the best out of our lives. So that's what I mean by emotional triggers. Emotional triggers aren't always bad. Sometimes they're leading you exactly to where you need to be and showing you exactly where you are and what needs to change.
Yeah, I can see where that would be or controversial and uncomfortable.
But
And and I agree though, because when we do the work of self mastery, when we're on that journey, when something happens, I have learned to immediately ask the question, what am I to learn from this? What is this teaching me? What is this showing me about me, as opposed to this person did this or that didn't go right and everything
right.
being external. I really have come to the place of quickly going inside, not my head, because we think too much,
Mm-hmm.
going inside of my heart and really identifying what this message, this information, this data is there to do to help me grow and to help me transform. And one of the things that you also say, and I really can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us on this one, because I love it. It's one of those writer downers, like a former coach of mine used to say. But you said that these 4 words really changed everything for you. And the four words are, it's not my responsibility. And I can't wait to hear you share, because if we can understand what is mine and what is not mine, your emotions aren't mine, your emergencies aren't mine, your challenges aren't mine, and we can actually embody it's not my responsibility, especially for people pleasers and recovering people pleasers,
Oh yes.
we would feel so much more freedom. And so I'm going to give the mic back to you so that you can really go deep on this one.
Well, I think burnout. You just said something monumental, because I think burnout is 70% of the cases of burnout, in my opinion, are due to people taking on responsibility that are not theirs. Um, whether it's trying to make somebody else happy, like you mentioned, people pleasing, trying to make somebody else happy, trying to do somebody else's work for them. We're constantly in society looking for validation and so many other things, other than ourselves. So we work hard and we hustle and we try to make everybody happy. And when people aren't happy, we look at ourselves and figure out what's more that we can do. And we try to make them happy again, whether it be in the workplace, trying to impress a boss, whether it's in relationships. We constantly push out all that energy to try to make someone else happy, trying to change someone, trying to fix something. And it takes all that energy and time away from ourselves. And the reality of it is none of that is our responsibility. You cannot control how someone else behaves. You're not responsible for someone else's happiness. You are not responsible for how somebody feels about you, what they think, their opinion of you. That is not your responsibility. We waste so much time and energy trying to be accepted or trying to be validated or trying to fit the mold of what success is in society, or trying to fit the mold of what somebody else may think is a good woman or a good man. I mean, this goes very, very deep. But the whole theme of this is seeking that external validation from everybody and everything else other than yourself. You're your only responsibility. And I'm not talking about parents, some of us parents that have children. Children are our responsibility. I get that. But I'm talking in the overall grand scheme of things. We have to learn to stop placing responsibilities on us that were not ours to begin with. We have to stop placing responsibility on us that was never ours to begin with. Once we do that, we learn that the only thing that we can control is our actions. The only thing that we can control is our emotions. The only thing that we can control is how we really see ourselves. And once you start to learn about those things and focus on those things, your stress level will go down. You'll be a lot more happier. You'll be a lot more focused. You'll stop procrastinating, because now you have more time to focus on yourself instead of trying to please everything and everyone else. So taking the responsibility off of yourself, listen, we are not, I often tell people, when I use this statement, I know everybody's not religious, but it's just like, we got to stop trying to do God's job. We can't fix anybody. We can't change anybody. We can't do any of these things, but we spend so much time in these realms where we're trying to do that, and it's not our responsibility. You are responsible for yourself. In fact, until you become completely responsible for yourself and you work on yourself, you're not even really that good to anybody else. You can't even really impact anybody else on the scale that you have the potential to if you're not taking responsibility for yourself and focused on yourself. So that's what I mean, we can talk about this for days, but the reality of it is we take on way too much responsibility, and we're not even qualified or not even expected to take on this responsibility. And for me, when I was burnt out a few times, That was the biggest thing. I tried to take on everything, every responsibility. I tried to fix everything. I tried to change everything. And I had all these issues going on with myself. It made absolutely no sense at all. It was a vicious cycle. And until I started to take the responsibility and focus on what I can change, what I can control, which is myself, that's when everything started to change. So please, if anybody is listening to me today, and if you want to get anything out of anything I say today, stop making everything your responsibility, because it's not. It is not your responsibility. You are your responsibility. And you cannot be good for anyone else if you are not being good to yourself.
Well, there you have it. I absolutely love the explanation and the examples, because we really do so much to ourselves. And I also want to say this, for those of us who have adult children, because having minor children is one thing. No one told us that once our children became adults, we would still have a huge responsibility to them. They forgot that part of the story. And so I want to say, for those of us who have adult children, parenting does not end. There is so much more. I am realizing that my children, 18 and younger, that was the easy part. This part, I have a daughter who's 26 and a son who's 32. And this part is so much more than I ever imagined it would be. And most of us also have aging parents. So we are sandwiched in the middle of continuing to support, not necessarily financially, our children who are adulting, and also supporting parents who are sort of turning back into children. You'll get that if you're there, or when you arrive. So realizing that we cannot take on things that aren't ours is very important when you're in this sandwich situation, because you feel responsible for both of those sets of people, and it takes on a totally new meaning. Burnout does. And so I know that there are solutions, there are strategies, there are things that we can do to change the trajectory of our burnout path. And I want to go back to Sid, and I want to have him dig into his framework, his proprietary framework that can help us with where we are and the steps that we can take to ease our journey, our days, whatever it is that we are experiencing in this moment can be bliss instead of burnout. We can have a breakthrough. And I believe this framework is a great place for us to start. Sid?
Yes, absolutely. So my framework is called the CURE framework, CURE. And I want to circle back before I get into it about Mayoko talking about people pleasing and how that leads to burnout. When we are kids, our primary caregiver is everything. For the first 2 years of our lives, we don't see a separation. So whatever they're feeling, whatever they're thinking, whatever they're going through, we are intimately connected to as if it's us. And that is because we need them for our survival. So we learn how to get their approval. We learn how to avoid their disapproval. And this kind of forms a blueprint or an internal thermostat, an emotional tone that plays out through our adult life until we until we're taught about it and we learn how to actually change it. And this is all going to make sense over the next couple minutes. I want to tell you a quick story about when I was trying to increase my income. I kept ending up with the same amount of money in my bank account at the end of every month. And I was so frustrated. I was so upset. And it was this pain and this frustration in my chest and in my stomach about, I increased my income finally to my dream amount of $10,000 a month. And I still have to check my bank account before I get a cup of coffee. What is going on? And I felt this tension in my body. Now, why is the tension in my body important? Because the C in the framework is for connection between mind and body. And until we understand what's happening in our body, until we have that connection, we are severely disadvantaged in understanding how to change our habits, how to change our behaviors, how to change our response to life as it comes, to our front step. So I was feeling into this emotional state and this feeling inside of my body that I noticed. And I asked this emotion, I asked this feeling in my chest and in my stomach. I asked him, how old are you? And to your point, Lynette, when we get triggered, it's one thing to intellectualize our feelings and our emotions and ask, what is this teaching me? Why is this here? But I submit to each of you that it's actually so much more important to ask your body and ask the emotion itself to talk to you, rather than thinking about it, rather than trying to make sense of anything. Let the emotion speak to you. And what I found underneath that emotion was an infant, a child. And my body started giving me flashbacks, a snippet of this moment, a snippet of that moment, that were all wrapped up in this sensation in my stomach and in my chest. And what I found was there was a little version of me, and I asked this little version of me what its name was, and it said its name was Nugget. I said, well, it was nice. It's so nice to meet you, Nugget. Can you tell me a little bit more about you? And what I learned from this childlike part of me was that, man, no matter what I do, it's hard for me to be seen. I have to do the most just to get a little bit of attention, is what I came to realize through these different scenarios that my body gave me. Now, I had a single mom until she remarried when she was 6, but prior to that, there was a tumultuous relationship with her and my biological father. There was a lot of times where I was alone, and there was a particular scene where there was abuse with another man, and I was a baby. And and I saw myself laying there crying while there's police in the room. And I would have never known this was happening if I didn't get into my body and ask the questions and sit with the tension. And so I relayed it back to my financial situation. Wow, no matter how hard I work, no matter how much I do, no matter how much I give, I'm only going to be able to just have barely enough to get by. That internal emotional climate, that thermostat, had been set when I was a baby, and I didn't know how to change it until I started doing the hard work. And that brings me to the U in my framework of cure, which is understanding your triggers and emotional trauma. I understood what that tension was telling me when I looked at my bank account at the end of every month, that same old story of I've just barely got enough. Well, if you think about money, money essentially nurtures us, it protects us, it provides for us, it makes us feel safe and comfortable and cozy, it gives us opportunities. We're more likely to try new things and explore the world so much more when we have safety with money. Well, isn't that the same thing as our mothers? Or our primary caregiver, if we weren't raised by our mother, isn't it the same thing? And so that relationship with my mom informed my relationship with money. And so how did I resolve this, which is the R in my framework? How did I resolve this negative experience and this past trauma? I asked this childlike part of me, I said, what do you need to feel safe? Because I have to reparent myself now. I have to give this part of me what it never got before, and it's never too late to do that. I said, what do you need to feel safe? And all he said was, I need you to spend time with me. I said, wow, okay, you need to feel seen. That would make you feel safe. So for the next 2 weeks, I sat in the bathtub, which is the happiest memory I have of that age in my life. And I sat in the bathtub and I spent time. I meditated and I pictured and felt into my chest and into my stomach where this young part of me resided in my body. And I spent time with him. And after 2 weeks, I went into that tub again and sat down. I was like, hey, Nugget, are you there? And I just got nothing. I just felt peace. There was nothing there. And would you know, after that, this was back in, I want to say 2021. After that, it became so much more easier for me to make $10,000 in a month and have money left over, and to even make more money, and to make more money by doing less, because my model had changed, my internal thermostat had changed. Which brings me to the E in the framework, which is elevating our emotional state, elevating our capacity for better, happier, more positive emotions. When you go through connecting with your mind and body, understanding your past traumas and triggers and resolving them, that naturally elevates your emotional state. And we can also do things on a daily basis to put us in a better emotional state so that we're more likely to take, new, better, different actions. However, that elevated my emotional state. I felt safer with money. I had a better life. I could walk more in my purpose. And so if we don't understand the models that we've been given for how we relate to ourselves and our emotions, again, this is what I mean when I say we're severely disadvantaged. And so the framework, again, is the CURE framework. It starts with the connection between your mind and body. If you don't have a high level of somatic awareness, and somatic meaning just body, if you don't know what's happening in your body the moment it begins to happen or shift, or if you're not in tune to the subtle shifts that happen as life happens, then you're missing out on information. 80% of information, actually. Because cutting edge neuroscience shows us that 80% of the data flowing in our body goes from the body up to the brain. So we can't think our way into our new life. We can't just change our thoughts and change our life. We can't just set, any arbitrary boundary. To Mayoko's point, we have to be in tune with where that's coming from. And so once we have a better relationship with our emotions and what's happening in our body, we can begin to understand why we are the way we are and why we do things or why we don't. Underneath every emotion is some need that we're trying to get met. Is there a better way that we could get those needs met? Now we can begin to learn that. And through that process, that's how we resolve these past emotions. That's how we resolve this past trauma, these negative experiences. And I want to emphasize, this doesn't have to take a long time. This can be a 10-second miracle of getting into your body. And somatic awareness, understanding your emotions, it's something that is a skill that you can get really, really good at. And you'd be surprised at how fast. And as you get good at this, you elevate your emotional state constantly. So you're more likely to be in the state to take the actions that you want to take that'll move your life forward. So that is my CURE framework. And I am done with that long share, but I hope it blessed everyone here. And thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And it blessed me for sure. And the mind body connection is so important. And a lot of people that hear me talk about scaling, I always say scaling is more than systems and SOPs. Scaling is mind, body, and business. Trying to scale your company and only focus on making money and not understanding the impact that your mind and your body have on making more money and sustaining that money, it's a no-go. They go together. They form the perfect picture for success and for legacy. So, I'm absolutely down for the mind-body part of the connection. And also, I was listening to you and thinking this would be a great way to end this event. So don't leave yet, because this is really going to be a great question. Same question for everyone. Ruth, thank you so much for joining us. I see that you are here and we appreciate you. And thank you everyone else for continuing to be here with us. Don't forget to click on the speaker's face if anyone resonates with you, if they all resonate with you, and follow them. That includes me. And so, um, once we are done with this particular question, we are going to meet you in the comments for a short after party, because we want to see if you have comments, if you've asked questions, if you've shared some of your experiences there, since we cannot see that while we're on stage. So here's the last question, and it's the same question for each speaker. Sid, since you were already speaking, I will start with you. And what I would like to know is, what would you tell your 10 or 12-year-old self that you think would really impact the journey that they take through mind, body, burnout, whatever that looks like for you? What would you tell your 10 or 12-year-old self?
Such a beautiful question. I would tell my 10 to 12-year-old self who he is. I would tell him who he is. Because having a white dad and a black mom, a white mom and a black dad, and going to church school, going to private school, going to public school, I always felt out of place trying to figure out who I was. And, I was always showing up as a different version of myself based on everything that was happening. And this would cause my own burnout later on in life, not really knowing who I am, why I do the things that I do, how I even got to this point in my life, because I wasn't living true to myself, because I didn't know who I was. And so I would just tell him who he is. And I really believe from there, just being valid and seen and recognized is the foundation of being able to see and validate and recognize yourself and the shifts that happen beneath the surface as you walk this walk of life. Thank you.
And who do you pass the mic to?
Let's go, Carla.
Thank you, Sid. So, I've been sitting here thinking about my 10-year-old self, and I remember being very optimistic about life, and at the same time, I would say a bit depressed, and I think about those two dichotomies and how they both existed in my 10-year-old self, and a lot of it was around the concept of enoughness. Um, I had I guess I would say, a kind of a fractured childhood. When I was about 9 months old, I went to live with another family, and so this created this fracture where I didn't feel connected to either my biological family or this new family, and so I became very performative, high achieving in school and all the things. And so I would just tell that 10-year-old self that you are enough, without the performances, without having to achieve for attention. That just is as yourself, your essence of who you are enough. And I think when we talk about boundaries and burnout and all the things, I think a lot of it is a response to, as Sid was saying, about wanting to be seen and overperforming and overdoing and all of those things, just to feel like I would just encourage my 10-year-old self to just be a 10-year-old and know that you do not have to perform for anybody's approval. Thank you so much for this, Dr. Lynette.
And pass the mic, please.
Yes, I will pass the mic to Mayoko.
All right. It's interesting. I think we're kind of all in alignment with this question. I would tell my 10-year-old self without the shadow of a doubt that the best thing that you can do for yourself is to be yourself. Like I said, society places so many restrictions on how we should be, how we should act, what success is. And I feel like telling my 10-year-old self, operate in that area of genius. I feel like we all have something that we do is it comes easy to us, but is extraordinary to everyone else. And I feel like somewhere along the line, we start to conform to what society says we should pursue, whether that's, um, the American dream or whatever it is. It's always some type of uh, pre-programmed thing when it comes to success and what we should do, what makes us valuable. So I would tell my 10-year-old self, really focus on who you are. Authenticity is very, very important. And the rest is going to come naturally. I feel like we lose that very early in life and we start to conform to what other people expect us to be instead of truly, truly being ourselves. So that's what I would tell my 10-year-old self. Focus on being you, be happy, and see exactly where it takes you, man.
I love everyone's response. And I would tell my 10-year-old self that you are amazing exactly the way that God made you. You don't have to fit in. You are a trailblazer, which means that you are creating, not following. And I would definitely tell my 10-year-old self that you are not broken. There's nothing that needs to be fixed.